Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second session of Joy Masters. I'm Joy, and this weekend I was thinking, because I'm kind of the organizer slash ringleader of this group, that I should probably have something prepared if somebody needed to cancel or didn't show up at the last minute. And it was a busy weekend, and so I thought, oh, okay, I'll do that, and then I just forgot about it. And last night, Steve Bunnell, who was supposed to be our introductory speaker, called me and said that he couldn't make it. So here I am. I didn't have a lot of time and energy to come up with anything brilliant, but fortunately we have a lot of books and things around us that give us guidance, and so I'm going to just briefly read a couple things to you about public speaking. And tonight, we were going to have 3 speakers. I have 2 in my audience right now, so we'll see if the third one shows up. And their topic, well, it wasn't a topic actually, it was a task to choose a story from Master or Swami that inspired them in some way, or that they could relate to. And so they're going to talk to us about the story and how it relates to their lives. So, before I share the things that I brought, I have a couple questions. Please raise your hand if you've spoken in front of an audience before. Everybody, okay. No, there's not a lot of people here. And how many of you were nervous, either before or during or even after you spoke? Everybody but one. Oh. The reason I asked that is because I mentioned last time that I tend to get nervous speaking in front of people, and it helps me to know that other people share that as well. And I think it's kind of a normal thing. You know how they say that public speaking is feared more than death, and I can relate to that. So let's see. All right, I had to think about my time here because we started a little bit late. So what I thought, you know, this is in evolution, this group, and I don't have clear guidelines with how it's supposed to go. You know, you're supposed to do this as the intro speaker, and you're supposed to say these things and whatever. So we're kind of making it up as we go along, and I thought that it would be nice tonight to share an element, like I said, of guidance regarding public speaking. And I first want to read from a handout that I received from Kalidas at the village, who started their Joy Masters group. And I believe that part of it comes from this book, How to Have Courage, Calmness, and Confidence. Very awesome book. I recommend it for anybody, for any reason, really. Some of the things on the handout come from this book, like I said, and some things are expounded on. And I don't know, Padma, have you heard of, you might have seen this handout. I'm not sure if you know if Swami did it, or I don't know if Savitri did it, but at any rate, I have copies of it by the door, so before you leave, if you'd like to pick one up, you can. And I just want to read a couple points. So again, it's called Overcoming Stage Fright. Stage fright or nervousness about public speaking are just certain forms of energy. Energy is always good when directed properly, so use this kind of energy wisely and joyfully to help increase your magnetism. Get it flowing correctly. And so that's the first little section under the title, and there it numbers, it goes 1 through 11 and just gives different pointers.
That sounds like Savitri.
Does it? Like I said, some are almost word for word from this book, and then there are things added to them. And I'm not going to, actually I think the things I'm reading are not in here. So that's good, so I won't be repeating myself. The first thing that stood out to me says, think sharing, not teaching. Think friends, not teacher and students. And today just happens to be Make a Friend Day, so I thought that was kind of a cute thing to add, that when we're out in the world and we're teaching and speaking, that we're out there to make friends and also to see the audience as our friends. And I always think of Swami's song, which we sing at school a lot, All the World is My Friend. And we say that pretty much every day to the preschoolers when they say, I don't want to play with so-and-so. Everybody's your friend. All the world is your friend. The next one I wanted to read says, Do your very best to relax and keep smiling. Send God's loving blessing to your audience and bless them for being willing to sit and listen to you. I thought that was interesting. What you say is not all that important. Let what you are shine through. And Padma mentioned last time how our particular vibration shone through when we spoke, and I think that's a really wonderful aspect. Just be yourself. And Savitri mentioned that at the end of the Joy Masters where she spoke. So just be yourself and be non-attached. The real secret is, as much as possible, to get yourself out of the way and let God flow through you. Once you are finished, give it back to God and don't keep running what you should or shouldn't have done through your mind. If there is something you need to learn from the experience to make it better next time, fine, but then let it go. So if you're like me, I went and watched the video of what we did last time in the first session, and I critiqued myself, and not in a horribly bad way, but I was able to let it go. I was really proud of myself because that was hard for me to sit down and watch myself and not be super critical. So I would recommend that to the speakers, that try to, as we're thinking, you know, sharing and friends, just when you're watching yourself, just think, okay, this is me, Master is coming through me, and whatever I say is not so much important as the vibration and the message that I'm channeling. Okay, and finally, I just want to read from the book that I mentioned. Master says, you must practice your technique with intelligence, inspiration, and God intoxication every day. Try to feel in whatever good work you do that God is working through you. So to me, this says that if you're nervous, it's easier than you think, because this is our path, right? To be a channel, to feel God working through us. So again, like I said, we can just come up here and be ourselves. If we can do that, then that's going to make it a lot easier for us. Here's our third speaker. Come on in. So I just blanked out on what I was going to say for the last part, which happens. That's okay. Again, like I said, if you want the handout on overcoming stage fright, it's by the door before you leave. And I think I'm just going to wrap it up now and hand it over to our first speaker. So thank you for coming, everybody.
Hi, friends.
Hello.
I'm Zach. Thank you, Joy, for introducing us and really for getting this whole thing started, and Kalidas and all the village people for initiating this. I think we could all use this practice. Probably could have used that sheet earlier this week. The story, it was a handout for this. The topic that we're going to be talking about is choosing a story and connecting it to ourselves. And for me, I was really looking for something that inspires me, and something I found inspiring. It's kind of a quirky story. It's from autobiography. One of us, I'm sure all of us know this story. It's actually in the first chapter, and it's what Master uses to end the first chapter with. And it's in his childhood, and it is with his sister Uma. So they're on the balcony, and this is where Master has been meditating, and this is very early in the book, and he introduces a picture of Kali to the reader. And Kali, and in a footnote it says Mother Nature, and it sets a really nice tone immediately when he introduces this, revealing his devotion to the Divine Mother. And the story basically goes on. He's on the balcony in his sacred spot with his sister Uma, and they're watching kites. A kite battle is happening, which is a game that apparently Indians play. And he explains this to us in the story, that they try to knock the kites out of the air with a piece of glass that is attached to it. And so he is feeling probably pretty confident in his sacred spot, says, "Isn't it great that Divine Mother will give me anything that I wish?" And Uma, who a history already in this first chapter when he almost wished a boil upon her to double in size overnight, followed up by challenging him again, and declares, if you can get 2 kites to fly over here, I'll believe you, but I don't believe you. And with great willpower and intensity, Yogananda describes, and this is a child, he describes to us how the kite battle starts, and the kite gets severed, and he starts praying to Divine Mother. And to him, well, first the kite hovers, and then he says a gust of wind comes, and it picks the kite up, and it pulls it to him, and it latches onto a nearby cactus, and he pulls the kite in. And Uma, though he says she expresses in her eyes some excitement at this, says, I won't believe it until the second one happens, till you receive the second kite. And so, sure enough, the battle starts again, and the kite gets severed, and here comes the kite, and Master praying to Divine Mother, the kite comes and latches on, gets taken by the wind, and latches onto that same cactus. And at that point, Uma says, Divine Mother listens to you, and she leaves, and with it we had the end of the first chapter. And I can remember reading this the first time that I ever read autobiography, and a lot of things get introduced in this chapter. His parents, their discipleship to Lahiri, his vision as a child of the Himalayan saints, and then he chooses to end it with this, and I thought, I've reflected on this quite a bit, and what it could possibly mean. And like I mentioned and alluded to, one aspect is the introduction of this aspect of God as Divine Mother to us, and which is just so powerful in and of itself, that he brought this message to us. And I was reading biography actually recently, and in that, Swami has a line that says, and he's talking about this book, and he says, it is a work that has made untold people all over the world aware of potentials within themselves of which they never before dreamed. And for me, that was what this story was. It wasn't that he came into this world with this power. He came into it to bring us into a new age, and we know that being on this path together. But to spiritual seekers opening this book for the first time, there's these stories, and as a child, to imagine the strength and determination that it would require to get nature to listen to you, for nature to obey your will. And it has inspired me since I've read that story and I've reflected on it. I think I've told Haley that story a number of times over the years, because it's been with me since I've ever read it. So the opportunity to tell that story up here to you guys was a great one, and I almost knew immediately. My first thought when it was a story to share, I had about 50 flood in my head, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is the worst topic. And then this one came. And so adding to that point, and maybe connecting it a little more to myself, obviously I say obviously to the people in this room who know that Haley and I are starting a farm, and have very much feel the same drive in looking for Divine Mother all around us, and in nature, and really in the spirit and everything. And when I think of that gust of wind that took that kite, it wasn't the gust of wind that took it, it was the spirit that Master called upon. And when I think of that cactus that pulled it in, it wasn't a cactus, it was the spirit inside of that cactus. And when we talk about nature, it's not the outward manifestation of nature, it is the one flowing life force that exists in everything that we do, that exists in all life, that we're trying to tune into. And there's another quote that comes later in the book, and it's completely unrelated, but it's Lahiri talking about this subject. And he's talking about science and science's understanding of nature and the limitations that come with that when we think that we can analyze something to understand it. And he says, we can't put things in a test tube to understand them, we can't analyze them, but when the self is in communion with a higher power, nature automatically obeys, without stress or strain, the will of man. And this is what Master had when he came into this plane, when he came to this earth for us. And he wrote these stories, and he chose that story, I'm sure very consciously, to end the first chapter, so that we would know Divine Mother. And I think, you know, obviously autobiography has touched all of us who've read it and who are here. But for me, coming into a path of agriculture and wanting to work with nature and with Divine Mother, it's stories like these that unlock up the potential in ourselves and in our hearts, that we can manifest this. We can do this also. It's not limited. It is infinite, and we are part of the spirit that Master taught us about. And yeah, it's just, it's the greatest blessing I know. And I think there's just one more quote that I would like to share that's kind of connected with this same thread. And it is from the person with whom Master dedicated autobiography to, Luther Burbank. And I kind of touched on this as tonight, directly following this, we're going to have our second class on the Yugas. And Bremen and Pablo will be leading us into Dwapara Yuga, which is very fitting, I think, for what the story that I'm talking about and Master's role here with all of us. And especially then when I reflect on Luther Burbank as the saint, the American saint whom he dedicated autobiography to. And the quote that Burbank said was, "Listen patiently, quietly and reverently to the lessons one by one which Mother Nature has to teach, shedding light on that which was before a mystery, so that all who will may see and know." That which was before a mystery. And here at the dawn, as we enter Dwapara Yuga, we can look back into Kali and see what these things were as a mystery, and nature as a mystery, and not as spirit, but as this outward manifestation. But Master has come, and he's told me that kite story. He's told us all these stories so that we know Divine Mother and this presence exists in everything. And, you know, as I look forward to the farm and I think about the mission for this farm, obviously we want to grow food in abundance. We want to take care of our family. We want to be sustainable in financial means and in terms of life on this planet. But I think it's the same as our goal in life, which is we want to experience that oneness of spirit, and we can feel that all around us in the trees and the birds. It's flowing everywhere, and the farm is located off of Haven Drive, and I think it's our haven, and I think Master gave us that, and I think that about wraps it up. Thank you, guys.
Perfect, 10 minutes.
Evening, fellow Guru Buyers. I find I'm going to be echoing some of Jack's theme, which is fine because it's a great theme. Initially, during the process of choosing a favorite story among the many of Swami Kriyananda and Master, I thought it's going to be a daunting task. But soon enough, I found in the Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter 38, titled Luther Burbank, a Saint Among the Roses. I found that chapter has special meaning to me and to many spiritual seekers. The text of the chapter relates several events in the deep friendship that developed between Luther Burbank and Paramahansa Yogananda. On several occasions they had conversations in Luther's garden, and they exchanged correspondence. Luther Burbank, of course, was a renowned horticulturalist who did work improving plant species with transplants, cross-pollination, and various experiments. The result of his work is that many plants, including tomatoes, corn, cherries, berries, were improved in hardiness and production. So this was Luther's gift to humanity to improve our plants. His name, Burbank, is now part of Webster's International Dictionary. To Burbank as a verb means to cross or graft a plant, hence figuratively to improve anything as a process or institution by selecting good features and rejecting bad, or by adding good features. Deeply impressed with Luther's many outstanding qualities, including his humility, patience, his many achievements, and the simple life that he led. Master described Luther as his American saint. Concerning what impressed me about the chapter in terms of application to my own life, and I think the life of a great part of humanity, is that Luther related to Master: the most stubborn living thing in the world, the most difficult thing to swerve, is a plant once fixed upon certain habits. Through repeated cycles of growing, a plant grows in Luther's a will of unparalleled tenacity. And as I read these words, I thought how similar to my own life and to seemingly the lives of much of humanity is that we have developed through repeated incarnations a will that is like our base level that we all too often return to. And that happens not only individually, but if we look at the history of the world, there are shining moments when mankind has advanced and built great things, and great works have been written. But throughout history, there's expressions of humans' willfulness and their inability to see the good and want to have constructive change. Having pointed this out, Luther is kind enough to offer a ray of hope for those of us who struggle with errant wills. And he explains that a plant's tenacity towards growing in a certain way can be changed by blending, crossing with another plant, a new life with the old. And through this crossing and continuing supervision, the plant eventually does change, and the previous lesser will is, in his words, changed at last. The living at Ananda, we are immersed in a unique opportunity to blend our stubborn individual wills with the new life offered by Master's Peerless Teachings. And we can accomplish this in a highly supportive, nutrient-rich setting. There are many teachings that we have the opportunity to learn about, various forms of yoga, various forms of meditation, a variety of gurus. But in its basic form, the teaching of Paramahansa Yogananda is the greatest simplicity. He enjoins us to discover the true self within, to set aside an ingrained willfulness that calls us back to previous choices. Setting aside our ingrained wills is perhaps easier said than done. Personally, I know my spiritual progress goes through cycles. Sometimes I seem to bring a halt to my own progress towards inner radiance. My consolation is that I will learn, possibly in the next meditation, the next satsang will be the key that will break the persistent habit. And whether our spiritual progress is slow or fast, we can be encouraged that this struggle to free ourselves benefits not only ourselves in the quest for personal liberation, but we can and are doing this for the good of a deeply suffering world. Our world, in terms of the history that we're learning about, has only recently, during the past 200 or a little more, I guess, now years, set upon a time of advance. We don't really know how smooth that initial advance is going to be, but we can continue to learn from the masters, and to conclude, I would say Paramahansa Yogananda, Jai Guru, all true masters, Jai Guru.
Well, I think all that have spoken tonight was very thoughtful, and I have to admit that I haven't prepared nearly as much. That being said, I must have somewhat misread the email. However, while not picking a specific story, although I might digress into one, I did choose a selection from Whispers of Eternity, which I feel I was guided to read from. So this one is called Driving the Rebel King Ignorance. O mighty mystic judge of life, I asked thee in my hall of soul stillness, what is sin? Thy whispers of silence, dim at first, grew into bright articulations of thought. I heard and understood thy meaning. Sin is a rebel king. His name is ignorance. Ignorance is the perpetrator of all evil, the main root of the tree of ill health, the primal cause of all error and soul blindness. King Ignorance and his army of bacteria, physical disease, mental desires, dullness and false ambition, spiritual indifference to high truths, have been devastating the nourishing harvest fields of spirituality. That harvest of countless fulfillments was ripe for reaping when the harsh tread of errors trampled it to the ground. I wanted to weep with despair when I heard thy voice whispering to me in my soul, the sun of my protection shines on thee always, equally on thy sunny days and on thy coal-black nocturnal hours. Thou shouldst always have faith in me and smile, for the greatest of all sins against me is not to be happy. Let the ripples of unceasing smiles play over thy face. Through their transparency, my light will come to thine assistance. By smiling with determined happiness, thou wilt always please me. So I encountered this reading in a talk of Swamiji's on Treasures Along the Path. It was titled How to Be Happy All the Time. And it seemed like exactly what I needed to hear at the time, because that happiness, that inner joy, is always accompanied by a profound relaxation and ability to cope with whatever comes our way. Especially trying to tie it to my own life. This evening in the car, I was experiencing exactly what Divine Mother wanted me to, as far as a feeling of tensing and thinking that there's a lot of things I had to be doing, and generally getting overwhelmed by what occurs in life. And it reminds me of something that Sister Yogananda said. She said quite boldly, as she always seemed to do, that that it doesn't matter what happens to us in life, and that it doesn't matter what we do in our life, and that what matters more is how we experience, what we gain from life, and how we react to our lives. And the example that Swami Kriyananda said with living from a space of joy has been probably the most profound role model, really, that I've ever had. And I've never really spent very much time with him, but his example is ceaseless. It's everywhere. It's omnipresent in all of the people that I serve with on a daily basis, mentors that guide me. There was an interview of Swami, I think it was recounted in a recent book from Crystal Clarity, but that he was being interviewed, I think in San Francisco or something, and several of the devotees who were in the retreat kitchen were listening to it and tuning in, and this interviewer was doggedly trying to bring Swami down. Every question, every remark, and every response was a critique, and the person who was telling the story was perked up because they were new to the path, and they were listening, and they probably stopped cutting the onion, and they were listening to his remark because it was so unusual to hear this kind of ignorance when in the presence of somebody who's so pure and so radiant. And throughout the course of the interview, Swami there was not a quiver, not a recoil. There was no ill will experienced in the conversation, and each reply was thoughtfully constructed, and always trying to see the best in that question, always trying to see the highest place that possibly the interviewer could have been coming from, even if he didn't know it. And eventually, at the end of the conversation, which is what it became, it ceased to become an interview or a expose, and it became just a genial conversation. The interviewer was completely won over. And there's moments like that throughout my life, it seems, where being thrown different scenarios, different tests, I so easily, we were speaking about this morning, I so easily go into the rationalization or the defense mode, and covering our tracks, covering our bases. But that's not really the answer, it seems. It seems that the example of Master and the example of Swami is one of just always tuning into that still calmness, where that love and that acceptance of the other person or of yourself can stem from. Somewhat lost my train of thought, but going back to living in a space of joy, and living and being happy, and the one thing that pleases God most, being our joy and our smile. I tend to get overwhelmed with all of the different aspects of the path that we can focus on. We can focus on so many different techniques and so many different books. There's 150 books. So there's endless routes. And I was talking with Bhakti on the way over here. I was saying, I think she brought it up, but it was that there's so many things. Master said that if you practice 1% of what I teach you, you'll find God. And I remarked that I think perhaps so much of the time that we spent wasting on the path is that we're going in all different directions. And there's a lot to be said in finding one thing, whether it be to focus on joy, or to focus on loving one another, or to focus on sitting in the stillness, or to focus on service. There's many disciples that had a very hard time sitting still, myself included. And but to focus on one thing, it seems, would be a very good thing to do. And I think for myself, I think the benefit and the bounty that I found in this reading was that for me, to focus on joy is going to be the greatest fulfillment. And it's so simple. It becomes so simple that simple living and high thinking in this world of complex living and just endless thoughts. It's not an outward thing. It's not an outward simplicity, of course. It seems like the deeper I've gone into this path, the more complicated my life has become. But there is this undercurrent of truth, that a vibration of stillness and simplicity. I think I have yet to tap into it, but it's there, and it's always there. 10 minutes, great. Well, yes. Well, I'm very thankful for these prayers. Just to wrap up, I thought I would share. When I first got this, I thought it was a little frilly. When I first came to Ananda, I was coming from a kind of more of a Buddhist tradition, and all the endless adjectives and seemingly unimportant adverbs and endless prepositional phrases upon other clauses were just overwhelming for me. But then again, I was focusing on the form. I was focusing on syntax, and I was focusing on what I learned in English. And after getting Kriya, the essence of all of these beautiful ramblings, they're not ramblings, of course, but the beautiful ambling poetry, the mysticism of it, is that joy. It's why did I put the word frothy in there? Because it's beautiful, because it brings a sense of joy. So I guess I'll leave on that.
Thank you. Okay, let's have the speakers come up and we'll give you a blessing. You just want to stand in front of the podium. That would be, in front. Sort of. Yes. Make sure you're all on my screen. Oh no, you're too tall. Back up. I can't mess with this or it'll. Perfect. Okay, let's close our eyes. And let's envision our speakers surrounded in light, blessing them in the messages that they shared with us tonight. Let's rub our hands together. Thank you again.
Thank
You
you.
can have a seat. And I'd like to invite Jamuna, our visiting minister, to come on up and let's see if I guess we're in the right spot. Just 1 second.
What a wonderful experience. And this is the second one, and they just keep being wonderful and full and rich. I kept gazing at Padma, and she kept gazing back at me, and we had big smiles on our faces the whole time. It's just beautiful to see you come up and give so much of yourself, on top of which you gave very interesting talks. You had a grasp of the material and you brought it to yourselves and shared yourselves with us. I think that's the key thing. And it had, it made it so clear that it doesn't matter at all that you're nervous. It's just interesting that Joy talked about that at the beginning, because it's just an energy that we can learn to work with. But you all came from your hearts, and you could feel it in your voices. Over the years, I've realized that we can listen to ourselves and make an adjustment right in the speaking to understand whether we're coming too much from ideas or coming from the heart. And you all just completely shared yourselves with us. And we walk away with this lovely sense of Divine Mother in nature, and Stephen wrestling with the will that needs grafting. And I'll never forget the frothy whispers. My book is so tattered, and I think that's a book that really grows on you, and it will over the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamuna.